We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis in Meseches Nedarim. This is Nedarim Daf 72b. The Mishnah says, Derech Talmidei Chachamim, it's the way of Talmidei Chachamim, Ad shelo haisa bito yotza me'etzlo, before his daughter leaves from his reshus, meaning before she gets married, Omer lo, he would say to her, Kol Nedarim shenadart besoch beisi, all the Nedarim that you made inside of my house, Harehin Mufarin, they are all annulled. V'chein habal, and similarly with the husband, ad shelo tikanes l'reshuso, before she enters his reshus, meaning before the actual marriage, while they're still in the stage of erisin, Omer lo, he says to her, Kol nedarim shenadart, ad shelo tikansi l'reshusi, all of the nedarim that you have made before you will enter my reshus, harehin mufarin, they are all mufarin, they're all annulled, mishetikanes l'reshuso eno yachali lahafir, because once she enters into his reshus, he won't be able to annul those vows that happened before the marriage. And the Gemara says, Boy Rami Bar Chama asks the following question: Baal Mausha Yofer below Shmi, is the husband able to annul the vows of his wife if he does not hear about those particular vows? V'shama Isha Dafkahu o Lav Dafkahu. When it says in the pasuk V'shama Isha that her husband hears about it, is that Dafka? Does he actually have to hear about the neder, or could he say a general hafara? Could he just say any neder, even the ones that I have not heard about it, they should be annulled? Amar Rava says, Tashma, come and hear a proof from our Mishnah. Derech Talmidei Chachamim ad shelo yatzas bito me'etzlo. It's the way of Talmidei Chachamim before his daughter leaves his reshus. Omer lo, he says to her, Kol nedarim shenadart b'soch beisi, harehin mufarin, all the nedarim that you made in my house, they're going to be annulled. V'halo shaman, the Gemara says, but he didn't hear about it. The father didn't hear about these nedarim. This just seems to be a blanket statement annulling all nedarim. And the Gemara says, no, l'chi shama hu demefer. It just means that when he hears about it, he's saying, when I hear about it, then I will annul it. And so the Gemara says, if so, kilo shama, lama leila meimar. But if he didn't hear about it yet, what's the point of saying anything? If nothing is annulled until he hears about the particular neder, and at that point in time he'll be made for the neder, so what's the point of making this statement that when I hear about it, I'm going to annul it? And to that the Gemara says, hakamash malan, it could be that the Mishnah is teaching us, that it's the way of Talmidei Chachamim to pursue these matters and to try to make sure they take care of these matters, but it's not actually annulled until he hears about the actual neder. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here, another proof from the Mishnah, Miseifa, from the end of the Seifa, V'chein habal, that the same is true by the husband. Ad shelo tikanes l'reshuso omar lo, again, before she enters his reshus, he makes the same kind of general statement and annuls all of her vows. It seems to be that he does not need to hear about the specific neder, and the Gemara answers the same. Hachanami, here also you can say, Omar lo l'chi shamana, that he says to her, when I hear about it, then I will annul it. So again, there is no proof one way or the other from our Mishnah. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come and hear a proof from the later Mishnah. Ha'omer li'ishto kol nedarim shetaduri ad she'avo mimakom ploni. If a person says to his wife, all of the nedarim that you vow until I come from a certain place, harehin kayom, and they're all going to be upheld, lo amar klum. So he hasn't said anything in that situation that is not going to be considered a statement that upholds the nedarim. Harehin mufarin, but if he says they should be annulled, so again he says all the nedarim that you make until I come from a certain place will be mufarin. Rabbi Eliezer Omer mufar. Rabbi Eliezer says that is an effective statement, and the nedarim are annulled. And so the Gemara says, V'halo shama, but he hasn't actually heard the neder, and apparently you're able to be made for a neder, even though you haven't heard the particular neder. And the Gemara answers, Hachanami, here also, to Amar l'chi shamana. What he's saying is that it should be annulled when I hear about it. When I hear about the particular neder, it's going to be annulled. The Gemara says, V'lama li min hashta. Why does he have to say right now that he's annulling it? L'chi shama leiferla. Why doesn't he just annul it when he hears the particular neder? What's the purpose of making the statement right now? And to that the Gemara says, Kasavar dilma matridna hishaita, because the person is thinking, maybe at the time I hear about the neder, I'm going to be distracted by something, and therefore at that point in time I won't remember to annul the neder, and so therefore I'm going to make the statement now that when I hear about the neder, automatically it will be annulled. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come and hear a proof from the following Braisa. Ha'omer l'apotropos, if a person says to an apotropos, that's somebody that's managing his affairs, Kol nedarim shenoderes ishti mikan v'ad she'avo mimakom ploni, all the vows that my wife takes from now until I come from a certain place, hafer, you should make sure to annul those vows. V'hafer lo, and then that's what happens. The apotropos annuls those vows for her. Yachol yuhu mufar, and I might think that that is effective and that the vows are annulled. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, Isha yekimenu v'isha yefeirenu. It says the husband, he's the one that's going to uphold the vows. He's the one that's able to annul the vows. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yoshia, meaning according to Rabbi Yoshia, you can't appoint a shliach to annul the vows of your wife. It has to be the husband who annuls the vows of his wife, and only the husband. Amar lo Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yonasan says to him, to Rabbi Yoshia, Matzinu b'chol haTorah kul. We find in the entire Torah, shlucho shel adam kemoso, that when a person makes a shliach, the shliach can act as the person's agent. And so therefore Rabbi Yonasan says you can have a shliach over here also to do the hafaras nedarim, and therefore this hafara will be effective. And the Gemara says, "Ve'afilu Rabbi Yoshia lo ka'amar, ela mishum degzeres hakasavu isha yikimenu v'isha yifeirenu." Even Rabbi Yoshia says that this is only not effective because of the gzeres hakasav, because the pasuk says it has to be the husband who is upholding the nedarim, and it has to be the husband who is going to annul the nedarim. But if not for the pasuk, avol dekuli alma, but everybody agrees, shlucho shel adam kemoso. Otherwise, shlucho shel adam kemoso, and therefore you could annul the nedarim. And the Gemara says, "V'halo shmiele," but again we have a proof because the husband over here hasn't heard the particular nedarim, and apparently the nedarim you could be made for nedarim, even though the husband hasn't heard the nedarim. And the Ran explains, "V'halo shamalei kilomar baal," meaning the husband hasn't heard the nedarim, and apparently we see from here that the husband doesn't have to hear the neder in order for the neder to be annulled. Alma lo boishmiya, you see that you don't need that the husband should hear the neder. And the Ran asks the question, v'chitem, if you're going to ask, liola me'malach de boishmiya, maybe really we do need to hear about the neder. V'shani hacha de ika shmiya da apetropis, but maybe it's different over here because the apetropis has heard the particular neder. So it's true that the husband has not heard the neder, but maybe the apetropis heard the neder, and that is enough. And since we say that shlucho shel adam kemoso, it's as if the husband heard the neder, and so therefore maybe that's how we satisfy that requirement. And so the Ran says, Tirtzu b'Tosfos b'shem harav Rabbi Yosef Zal. They answer in Tosfos in the name of Rav Rabbi Yosef Zal. The lesson that that's not a good argument. Dim isa debay shmiya, because if it was true that we required shmiya, if it was true that we required to hear the particular neder, mi'iko midi debal no matzi mefer, would it be possible that you have a neder that the husband himself cannot annul because he didn't hear the neder, u'shliach matzi mashvi, and he'd be able to appoint a shliach to be made for that very same neder? That wouldn't be possible, and so therefore the hearing of the shliach would not be enough if the husband did not hear about it, if hearing in fact was a requirement. And so that's why the Gemara is bringing a proof from here that shmiya seems to not be a requirement. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph.